Dr. Reed here. How's it going, guys? Reed here. We're going to have a very interesting discussion today. This series I'm doing is called Narcissism as a Network. Right? And I'm trying to help you understand how much trouble you're in when you're in front of that narc. Reason why? They were unalived a long time ago. And they serve as like a remote viewer, right, for the narc that unalived them. And they're a part of that narc network that you will never be a part of. They're only with you while they have their mask on to get what they need from you to feed to the other members of their cult or their family or their clique, right? Or their flying monkeys, right? These people are sick, dastardly sick, awfully sick. These are awful idiots. Jesus referred to them as pigs and dogs, and I think that's the way you should look at them, because that's reality. When you look at that awful, filthy narc in front of you, and you can recognize in real time that they're trying to gaslight you, they're trying to brainwash you, they're trying to manipulate you, they're trying to throw you off, they're trying to alienate. When you can see it in real time, you be like, wow, man, you fucking nuts. You're motherfucking nuts, right? You can get to the point where these idiots cannot hide. No matter where they are, you can point them out. There's one, there's a narc. Don't even have to say anything. There he is, there she is. And they know that. Once you understand how to recognize the sick idiots, they know it. They get to you first. When they recognize that you understand how to identify these sick people, they start targeting you off the bat. That's when you enter a new community, maybe start a new school, or start a new church, or start a new work environment, and they know you understand how to spot them. So what they do, they start off right away getting everybody not to like you, to start to destroy and paint who you are to everyone around you before you even get there. They go ahead of narcissists, precede you in every environment. And I'm not sure if you understand how much they do that. That's a central part of the narcissist plan, is whatever environment you into, get to that environment first and tell them of your coming, of your arrival. These people are sick. So while they're with you, they never let you know the day before, the other day before, that they were there the day before. And this is just round two for them. This is round two for you. You enter this environment thinking that everything is new, but they've already rehearsed what they were going to talk about, how they were going to target you, how they were going to embellish what they perceived as your weak points up to everyone so they don't connect with you. These people spend the majority of their sick time doing sick shit like that. And this is all behind your back. And they all cluster, the sickos all and the weirdos all cluster together around your back and start making up sick plans like this. So remember, if you're in front of that narc, you're under attack. And all of them are after you, right? Because all of them benefit from your trauma, your problems, your demise, excessive work. They all benefit from seeing you struggle even more. All of them, right? So this podcast here is about the unseen observer. Right. Now, let me help you understand what the unseen observer is. And it's very important that you be able to peek this out, because you have to be able to recognize these sickos in real time. How can you recognize how can you protect yourself if you can't recognize how to identify these sick people. And that's what we're going to go over. And narcissism is a network. Let me see. Hold on 1 second. Get some more candy. Get some candy. Okay, so let's see. Okay. Some gummy bears. And chocolate. I don't want to start addictions out there, but don't eat gummy bears and chocolate, right? So you're gonna be doing it on your show. So you put the gummy bear. Then you do your lecture. Oh, this is really good. Addicted to this. Okay. Okay. Back to the show. Okay. So there's a concept known as the unseen observer. This concept has been around for millennia, right? See, how do I explain this? I'm going to try to explain this concept by going to Fortnite. Let me see. Okay, let me do this. Let me go to YouTube. And we're going to go to Fortnite. Fitting subject, Fortnite. Okay, I'm going to try to show you something. See here. See, for the most part, you have two processors, right? Let's say you have a processor in this physical brain that's the tissues made up of, okay? And that's the brain and the tissue that you use, okay? That's let's call that your lower brain, or the brain in your lower self, right? But you also have a higher self, right? And then there's a processor. To simplify this, there's a processor in the higher self. Now, the lower self has a processor and the higher self has a processor. Let me tell you this. You want to always use the higher processor, right? You want to always use the higher processor.
Congratulations.
I'm streaming right now. Why don't you just come on the screen, Water? Oh, you gonna bust my screen and then Water gonna come on the screen, Water? Girl, you know how you gonna crash my screen and then Water come up? Come on, let me finish. I'll call you back.
Okay, but you have to at least to finish.
I know. Okay, thanks. Okay, where is it? Okay, so you have two processors. So you want to use, you have the lower processor that's made by the tissue in the brain. As the tissue degrades, the processor degrades, right? And that's in your lower self. And then you have a processor that's represented in your higher self. The process of healing is abandoning the lower processor and living your life at the higher processor, right? The lower processor was the adapter that allowed you to enter this environment, and it gave you the first definition of everything. So when you were born with a brain and a processor, and it was able to tell you, index everything around you. This is a wall, this is a color, this is light, this is a brick, this is a chair, this is love, this is running away, right? All these things. Okay, and that's what the initial processor happens. However, this degrades over time because it's consistent of tissues and networks in the brain, right? Now, you have the higher processor, growth and healing and divinity all is in simple. Eliminate looking at things using the lower processor and only use the higher processor. Okay, now, how do you know you're using the lower processor and how do you know you're using the higher processors? When you're using the low processor, the viewpoint looks different than if you're using the higher processor. If you're using the higher processor, the whole viewpoints look completely different. And I wanted to show you Fortnite to give you an example. Okay, now let's see that, okay, in Fortnite, the lower processor is the hand-to-hand combat that we can see where you're shooting through the gun and you're scoping and things like that. That's the hand-to-hand combat. Let me just try to see if I can find one here. There you are right there. You see you're looking at things from his perspective, and he can only see the things in that narrow visual field, right? Well, I mean, this video game shows a slightly different perspective because it shows a viewpoint behind him, but we should be, yeah, right there. When he puts this scope in, this is how the lower processor looks, right? Imagine you driving down in your car and you're looking through the windshield. That's how you know you're using this lower processor, right? And also, the second part of this is that you have feelings and emotions. In these games, in the first person, when they get hit, they react to the hit. It's all this emotions and all this turmoil and the turbidity and turmoil and things like that. That's what happens in that lower processor, right? So again, stereo vision, right? And then mood and emotions. That characterizes this lower processor. Now you want to get to the higher processor. This perspective look completely different. Now the higher processor would be when he's drifting above the map and looking down on everything. Let me see if I can find the point where they jump out of the van and then start actually, let me see tournament. Okay, let me see tournament. I'm sure they'll have some. Let me see here. Now, this is the different processor here, right? Okay, this is a viewport from a different processor. Let me go ahead and put them. Let me put them side by side. The lower processor is a 3D viewpoint. And the lower processor, being a 3D viewpoint, I'm going to go where he zooms in. So here is a 3D. This is the lower processor. So as he goes in, zooms in, he has more tunnel vision, and then he's able to engage in the conflict right there. But the conflict is involving emotions, kinetic. This lower viewpoint is referred to as a 3D perspective, and it's a kinetic, emotional type engagement. All right. Now, as opposed to, this is the viewpoint where you're driving down in your car behind the driver's, the steering wheel, and you're looking through the mirror. That's in 3D. But if you were to have a crash, you'll feel the crash full force, right? That's the huge disadvantage to the 3D environment or using your lower brain is that it's in order for it to operate, you have to have that duality there, meaning that you have to lose everything that you acquire. I mean, you lose everything, right? Let me look at here. So that's the 3D perspective. And then this is the perspective from the higher self. So if the lower self is a 3D perspective and it's like you driving looking through the windshield, then the higher self, the higher processor, or the 5D perspective would be the same thing as if you're looking at this situation through Google Maps. So if you look at the same situation you're in from Google Maps, meaning depersonalize yourself and just look at everything, nothing but the facts, nothing but emotions, nothing but the facts, right? Then that's a higher self perspective, and that's looking at the situation, but you're not connected to the situation. It's not kinetic, means you don't do anything about it, you just observe, right? This 5D perspective is a very powerful perspective because it allows you to look at the entire situation. If you're driving down the street and in the 3D perspective and you're going and you hit a car or you get stuck in traffic, then your only information is what you view in front of you. And that's that's not a good way to make decisions with that small view in front of you, right? And what do? You pull out your Google Maps and then you look at the situation from what? A 5D or a higher self perspective, right? You look at Google Maps because you want the benefit of a depersonalized viewpoint. And there's no way that the information from the 3D perspective inside the car will be superior than the information that you can get from Google Maps. From the Google Maps perspective, you can realize that you don't even have to sit in traffic. It's just a roadblock, a block ahead. You can go around and keep going. All of these different perspectives you can see from that Google Maps perspective. Okay, so why is this important? Important for several reasons. When I say the unseen observer, why is this important? Several reasons. Now remember, when that narc is in front of you, the narc does not have access to the 5D or that perspective. Narc does not have access to this higher self and is not aware that this higher self is even available. So the narc only have access to that 3D view. So they're very limited in their way of understanding things. They're very inflexible, can only see things from their perspective. Why? Because they do not have the capacity to toggle back and forth. If you are in a fight with a narcissist, psychopath, sociopath, the only way you're going to survive that is if you get to your higher self and start looking at the whole situation for Google Maps. So when they punch a hole in your tire, you know, hey, ain't no point in getting fussed up over there. There's more resources down the hall. This is just silly. We just move on. When you get that higher perspective, it's hard. They cannot touch you. When you get to that higher perspective, it becomes a situation like, yea, though I walk through the valley of shadow of death, I should fear no evil because thou art with me, right? Now, lower self, higher self, the unseen observer. When you look at things from the 3D lower perspective, you behave a certain way, kinetic with mood, kinetic with feelings. If you're looking at a 5-3, your higher self, you're only observing but not getting involved. From your higher self, you observing, there is no reaction, there's no response, there's no emotions at all. The 5D perspective should be void of any emotions. It should feel the same way the executioner feels right before he or she have to put in their work. And the executioner is cold, feel nothing. So when you're at that 5D perspective at your higher self, you don't feel nothing. You just observing reality the way it is. And it is the way it is. When you see that sick, awful narc in front of you, lying to you, gaslighting you, trying to distort what you're saying, trying to put fake memories in your head once you do all that, oh man, this is sick. This is sick. You can just look at that person and see how sick they are. You don't have to go on the emotional roller coaster that they're going to try to put you on. The emotional roller coaster is because, yes, you are stuck in 3D. You are in the primitive world. You with your lower self. And that's all it is down there. There's nothing else to do but to rock and roll down there. Right. So now, in this 3D world, you run into these sick narcs and they come up to you, right? Because they want to be your friend, right? They want to get in on the inside to know what your secrecies are, right? Why? Because narcs they have to get involved in your personal life and your things in order to broadcast the intimacies and the secrecies and all the things that you value to their network of criminals, misfits, pigs, dogs, people who stink, all of these people. They want to give it to them. Why? Because as a community, they can share. They'll give you up just to other narcs just so they can get one up, so they can get some help in the future. And they got to come through for those too. A narc help another narc in the future, man, that's guaranteed support in the future. Guaranteed. And these sick people do all this stuff in the background around you while you're having normal relationships. They plotting and planning and doing this crazy stuff in your background all the time. Now, so imagine a sick narc, a sick, disgusting, stinking narc. Awful. These people, and all of them have some type of sick problem wrong with them. They all have something gross about them, right? All of them, something gross about them. But okay, so how do you recognize when that sick narc is that person you just met or you around is really a narc? Now, when you, the narc, and other people get together, the narc is going to try to take over the whole reality and lead the reality for everyone, right? Okay. So you know that's going to happen because they have to interpret, they have to control reality and all those things and what people say and all those things like that. Okay, you know they're going to do that. But then if you don't allow them to be the control the reality, they cannot go into yours. They cannot go into the reality you created. So meaning that if they don't control the entire reality that everybody in the room is in, if you control it, they're not going to go into that reality. They're going to sit back and watch. That's it. They'll be there with you physically laughing and doing all the actions and the reactions, but they're just with you in close proximity, but they're not engaging in the reality that you just made. So for example, let's say that you're talking about something that's important to you and the other people there, and the narc don't want you to shine. Let's say you talk about your graduation and narc don't want you to shine because they never graduated, right? So when you start shining and stuff like start talking about your graduations, they're not going to embellish on the conversation or do anything that stimulates the conversation to blossom or bloom. They'll interrupt people's laughter. They'll redirect the conversation. They'll not react to the react appropriate as they would normally of a joke or cracking a joke or try to rephrase the joke. They'll try to do something. If those are not successful, then what they do, they sit there and just shut off. So, because remember, you can only have two processors, right? Now, if they can't control the scenario, meaning get you into their reality, they can't leave their reality. So they just stand at the perimeters of theirs and just look at yours. And so in the group, they sort of remain silent. They appear as if they're unseen, right? But then in the middle of a conversation, you recognize that they are only observing. So for the narcissist, if they cannot control the reality, then they cannot leave reality and go into the reality that you make. So for example, you're hanging out with your friends. They want to talk about them and control the whole conversation. And you want to talk about your graduation that just happened a day ago, right? When you take the conversation from them and start talking about your graduation, they can't get engaged with it. If they do, it's like a characterological, a laughter that's like the Joker. It's like it's a heckling, but it's not a truly enjoyment that you just reached this accomplishment in your life. So what they do, they sit there in a group and they remain silent and sit there and just observe. Don't say, they'll say a lot, but it may not connect to the central theme. It may be constant efforts to derail the conversation and bring it back to them. But now, the reason why they're viewing that is because they are not there with you emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, physically. Their body's there, but their attention and concentration is focused inward in an effort to document, record as best they can your privacies, your conversations, anything that's damaging you. That's the point where they're recording you, because they're recording you in their mind. See, you can't engage in the conversation and record at the same time, right? So they're recording the conversation and remaining unseen as if they're like a spectator at a movie. Can imagine you having a play and one of the actors in the play is not really acting out their role. They're actually simply observing the movie, not from the audience, but inside the show, from inside the play. This is the classic move that sick narcissists do. They will even, I've seen sick narcissists even join the teams just to see people fail on the team. I've had this sick narc, I was in high school, join the football team in high school just to fumble the ball. Man, I couldn't believe it when I was in high school. I had this dude, ignorant narc. I mean, one of the most dangerous narcs you can find. Always held a gun on him, right? And you know you can't do anything. He's always sneak up with you with the gun. These how these narcs do it. So this unseen observer, they're observing you inside the group as if they were sitting in the audience and you're on stage. Why? Because you're prey. Because when they go back and reunite with all the sick psychopaths and sociopaths that's in their family, like their sick mother, their sick father, their sick sister, their sick brother, their sick friends, all of those, when they go back and there, this is what everybody else is doing. They're simply observing you from a distance and really not directly involved in your life, but they control the perception of all the things that you engage with. These people, through this sick narcissist, you can have you reinterpret all the objects and values in your life by not even being in direct contact with you. And they do it through the unseen observer process when the narc is there with you, just recording and documenting and transmitting everything they have back to this network that they're going to use that information to target you. Yep. They're going to use it to target you. Now, you're dealing with this. And of course, this is how rumors spread. You know, you think somebody is your friend, right? This is now, for years, guys, I was mistaken or something. I was mistaken. I heard that phrase, keep your enemies closer than your friends. I always looked at it and said, there's no way I will keep my enemies in front of my friends. Why would I want my enemy? I would want my friends closer to me than I want my enemies not to be able to see me or not to be. Why would I ever want my friends to be the enemy be closer to me than my friends? That don't make any sense. I was looking at that from a defensive posture, you know, like me defending myself, right? And that was just my inclination. However, ladies and gentlemen, this appears to be the hallmark of the narcissist game plan. This is the central feature. They become your friend. And when I start to understand, when you take this phrase and you take more of a pathological, aggressive posture, it means something else. So if I want to harm you, if I want to harm, this is what this says. If I keep your enemies closer than your friends, meaning if I want to harm you, I have to make you believe that I'm your best friend. Isn't that sick? And the more I convince you that I'm your best friend, the more vulnerable you become. And then the most vulnerable you become, then I can exploit you. So if you want to harm someone, then always keep your enemies closer than your friends, because you want your enemies to believe that you are a friend. And that type of thinking is so sociopathic, and normal people like us would never even think about that. So when the unseen observer, they try to come and be your friend first. I'm your friend, right? I'm your friend. Tell me your secrets. And then while you're telling them the secrets, they remain silent. They all calm, all relaxed, all everything's going well from them. They don't have much anxiety, not anger. Anytime the narc has gotten access to your personal space, oh, they calm and cool. No problems. They all nice, because now this is where you start to see the unseen observer. They're not there with you. They're there to disclose everything about your inner network and your secrecies and all your vulnerabilities, broadcast them out to everyone, because that's why they always record you, right? If they get recordings of things in your house, your phone book, your social media friends, all these things, when they're going to use all these things to target you, right? Everything you're telling them will be passed to this network, and they're going to modify it, change it, dramatize it, to do whatever they can to make the people you around believe that you're a degenerate. They're going to do the unseen observer is the one that collects your private information under the auspice of being a friend. Now, cold. The game is cold. That's why the only solution is to stay away from these people, never go around them, never accept anything from them, never think about them, no contact, because you're entering a network, and that network is dangerous. You're never going to survive it. So, hopefully, that'll give you some ideas on how to protect yourself out here. These people are straight up criminals, belligerent animals. Animals. Right? They don't mean you any good. I hope that's helpful for you. But just remember, narcissism is a network. If you're in front of that sick narc, they were unalived by either their mother or their father. And now they're attached to them permanently. And you are just the temporary fuel supply or source while you're in front of them. And during that process, they wear this mask. And when you see that mask just stop, calm, relax, and just observing, they look like this. Or just there in the conversation, frozen in the conversation. Just watch. They're recording. Run for the night. Take care, guys. Hope this is helpful for you. Read out. Ciao.